Shalom and welcome to the show. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hey, Jay from Alabama.
Jay from Alabama. How are you, Jay? What's the question for Rabbi today?
Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 21 through 23.
Okay, hold on one second.
The gist of it.
I got a little wind in your background. All I heard was Jeremiah 7, verse 21 through 23. Okay.
That's it.
Okay, and what was your statement with it, or your question?
Well, God is saying that he's tired of offerings and sacrifices, and that he goes on to say he never commanded offerings and sacrifices in the first place. So that just seemed like a contradiction of the entire Torah. So I was wondering what's going on there.
That's a good question, actually. That's good. Jay, thank you. Great question, man.
Thanks. I'll hang up and listen.
Okay, thanks.
That's a brilliant question. I don't know who you are, but I'm really grateful you called in. So, Jeremiah 7 probably is the most famous chapter in the book of Jeremiah, is it? I think so. And that chapter is very famous because it nearly got Jeremiah killed. He was that close to being murdered because he preached this chapter. But in order to understand what Jeremiah is saying, it's widely misunderstood, but it's going to make so much sense when you hear it. So listen carefully. First of all, we need the historical context. What Jeremiah is saying is, first of all, Jeremiah is going, what the whole chapter is, stop with your sacrificial system and don't think that your sacrifices and your offerings, olos and zevach, are going to help you. They're never going to save you. You are in huge trouble. Okay? Now, who is he talking to? Who is he talking about? He's going to go on, stop believing these lies. In fact, in the very next chapter, which is totally connected to 7 and 8 are, the chapter break is almost completely artificial. In chapter 8, stop believing all these lies you're being told. It won't help you. So what lies is he talking about? There's actually a famous verse, which unfortunately is misapplied, where Jeremiah condemns the lying pen of the scribes. And some people misconstrue this to mean that someone had corrupted our text. That's not what happened. Let me explain. Jeremiah lived toward the very end of the First Temple period. And in the last 18 years of the First Temple period, the Babylonian Empire had conquered Jerusalem, and God was not on the side of the Jewish people. The destruction of the First Temple was virtually imminent. And Jeremiah was saying to the Jewish people, you must repent and do not in any way go to war with the Babylonian Empire to try to defeat them to gain your independence. Again, this is the Babylonian Empire, so therefore the nation, the land of Israel, the nation, is completely under an occupation of the Babylonian Empire. And what happens? There are false prophets that are going around saying, no, we have a temple, we have blood, we have a sacrificial system. If you're covered in the blood, if you got the sacrifices, if you have the temple, we're fine. Let's go to war with the Babylonian Empire. This is the major problem that Jeremiah is going to be dealing with. And Jeremiah is saying, essentially, you're a bunch of fools. You don't realize that the sacrificial system cannot help you. Now, when Jeremiah says this, he is saying that when did I speak to you about olos and your zvachim? That's the literal words. Ola is a whole burnt offering. The zvachim are the general sacrificial system when you went out of Egypt. When you went out of Egypt, the only sacrifice that the Jewish people were commanded to bring was the korban Pesach, which is completely different, which demonstrated that you had faith in God. But there's nowhere when you were going out of Egypt that God is telling you about all these hordes and hordes of sacrifices and offerings. So So the key that Jeremiah is putting forward is, if you think your sacrifices and oblations that are brought in the temple, in the Beis Hamikdash, are going to save you, I got news for you. And that news is that you might as well take your sacrifices and add them to your meat and just eat flesh. Just make hamburgers out of it. It isn't going to help you. Tragically, the Jewish people did not follow him. And tragically, the Jewish people rebelled against the Babylonian Empire, against Nebuchadnezzar, and eventually the first temple was destroyed, and the false prophets, those are the authors who the false scribes, were proven to be as such. And the Jews were carried away to Babylon. About 90% of the Jewish people were carried to Babylon. About 10% of the Jewish people were carried away to Egypt. Jeremiah is saying, stop trusting. And that's what he says. Don't trust in the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord are these. It's not going to help you. What God does want you to do is he wants you to repent. At this point, you should have figured out that this is exactly the problem that Jews are confronted with when Jews for Jesus comes knocking at our door, and they're telling us that all you need is the blood and that will save you. Jeremiah's whole speech is, I know that temple was built by King Solomon. I know you think the ceremonial laws of the temple will somehow rescue you. It won't. This message of Jeremiah is echoed by Isaiah, it's echoed by Micah, you'll find it in Hosea 6:6, in Micah 6:6 through 8. I mean, just so read it for yourself. So that's what Jeremiah is saying. Jeremiah is saying is stop listening to the lies. And the lies are that the sacrifices will save you. When you went out of Egypt, this was not the issue. There was a Korban Pesach, yes, but all these offerings, yes, they're important, and they were commanded later at Mount Sinai, for sure. But what God does want from you is he wants you to be faithful and saying, obey my voice. Look at verse 23. Ki im es hadavar hazet tzivisu aisam. This is the thing that I did command them. Leimar shimu b'kaili. Listen to my voice. V'hayisi lachem le'elokim, and so that I will be to you a God, v'atem tihi la'am, and you will be to me a people. And then God will protect you. So that is the message of Jeremiah. The central message of God is not a sacrificial system. The Passover lamb was necessary because the Jews had to demonstrate their faithfulness to God, and that they were willing to offer an animal that the Egyptians worshipped to demonstrate that their fear of God exceeded their fear of the Egyptian army. So Jeremiah 7 is splendid.
Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra v'et nasa בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה